and thank you to my first round of panelists who are going to blow our minds with what you might think has no place in a security conference, but diversity and inclusion is an important topic. The way that you think, the way that you behave, and how you interact with the people around you influences your organization and the success that it is or isn't going to have. I can't remember the exact numbers, but one of my statistics that I had written down on paper that's not in front of me was the number of companies that are more successful because they have diverse boards and they have diverse workforces compared to organizations that are much more homogenous. And so I am a huge fan of bringing everybody who is interested and available and has the skills and the knowledge and the ability, bringing them together to support the organization, regardless of what they're contributing, makes for a better organization, returns more shareholder value, and makes this activity worth doing, whether we're doing conferences or events or corporate work or nonprofits or charities or anything else. Diversity and inclusion have a strong place in what is going to be the future of business, because the companies that aren't doing it are failing and they're going away and they're going to be replaced. And so
it's great to be here. It's my first conference since all of this. I'm sure for many of you it's the same. So it is literally wonderful to be here. I used to go to so many conferences, so it's good that we're back. My name is actually Deidre Diamond. It's hard to say. Don't feel bad. We haven't known each other more than a year. And I'm the founder of Secure Diversity, which is a firm that focuses on bringing women into cybersecurity. It also focuses on supporting women who are already in cybersecurity and having opportunities to speak publicly, career development. We just had our 6th event of Day of Security in March this year, if you've heard about it. 1,200 women, 112 speakers that were women, training other women, sharing their craft. And so that's a product of founding CyberSN, which I founded 2 years prior, 7 years ago now, which is the largest cybersecurity talent acquisition firm in the US. We are also in Europe and Canada. And that journey really showed me how I needed to participate in the diversity and inclusion space, which I like to tell people, let's change it to inclusion and diversity, because with inclusion comes diversity. You cannot have diversity without inclusion. And so I come to you with a lot of data, 30 years of my career. I have a lot to share, and I've been in the jobs business of tech and cyber since January of '94. And I worked for 2 serial entrepreneurial men for 21 years across 3 different companies. And so I know what it means to really create cultures that can be inclusive and thus have diversity and make money. And so because I'm able to put those things all together, and money usually talks, I like to get out and share what I know about how to do this. So it's good to be with you all, and I'm certainly happy that you're putting this on. So thank you for trailblazing.
I do what I can.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Calvin Nobles, and a little background on me. I spent my formative years, 26 years of my life, serving in the United States Navy. And I did some amazing things while I was in the Navy. I always tell people I grew up in the Navy, because I went in as a kid and I was allowed to do some great things. I started off as a medic, and I wanted to go to flight school. I went to flight school, and one day I heard about this cyber stuff many years ago, before it was called cyber, when it was worked behind black doors, green doors in the basement of the National Security Agency. And I said I wanted to go there where they make the monsters, right? And so I went there, I spent some time there, and I never went back to flying. I still fly for myself today, but I never went back to flying for the military because the work was so compelling and so interesting. Along the way, I picked up a couple of degrees, and one thing I would tell you about being Afro-American naval officer, you are, in a lot of cases, going to be the minority. You're definitely going to be one-on-one in many cases. When I was in the squadron, I definitely was one-on-one. And even when I was working at the National Security Agency, I was in the very low numbers of minorities we had there. I remember in 2016, I was ordered to go take command of a unit at Fort Meade. On my way into Fort Meade, I got a phone call saying, hey, Calvin, we got better plans for you. Due to the low numbers of minority senior officers at the Navy Cyber Headquarters, you've been ordered to Navy Cyber Headquarters. Our staff is very white, and we're trying to change it. So I went to the Navy Cyber Headquarters staff in lieu of going to command. And at that point, I was like, I promised myself I would never do more than 30 years in the Navy. I'm like, this is it. Because when I make a promise to myself, I keep that promise. So I transitioned out of the military, got picked up by Wells Fargo right away. Spent a lot of time at Wells Fargo, and I could tell you it's in the news. Other than what's going on financially, we also was in the news about our numbers. Our numbers were very low. So I spent about 3.5 years at Wells Fargo. Then a couple months ago, a great school, very small school up in Chicago, came knocking. And they was like, we want a diverse candidate to lead our cybersecurity program who has corporate experience and a lot of leadership and someone who's a cybersecurity expert. That school is the Institute, Illinois Institute of Technology, where I'm the department chair for the Information Technology and Cybersecurity program. So I will be building their program, and I would tell you one of the first things I noticed when they sent my binder in the mail of all my faculties, and I'm sitting there, I'm looking, I'm like, we are very white. We have one female faculty member on my department. So I was on a call with everybody yesterday. My number one priority is to diversify my staff. I can't recruit women and people of color when 99% of my staff is white male. So I got to change the face of that. And so that's my first goal. And so I'm glad to be here with you today to talk cybersecurity through and through, the diversity, the lack of efforts, and whatever else you guys want to throw at me.
So one thing I want you guys to keep in mind, and I do this on purpose, is that we did not prepare the questions and the answers for the panel so that they will be surprised by what I ask and you get their genuine response. That is always interesting, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that that is the way that this is structured. The benefit of doing that is that something that Calvin said in his introduction, I think is a great way to start the conversation, and we'll start with Deidre, and I apologize. I actually have a cousin named Deidre, so my brain is shorting out. But the question that we'll start with, and this is for the online audience, so don't forget to look at the camera, and for the in-room audience, so don't forget to look around the room. Why does diversity matter in cybersecurity? Now, it's an open-ended question, and when we say diversity, we're talking about racial, ethnic, national, gender. All diversity, in my humble opinion, is important. But from your perspective, especially considering your organization, why does it matter?
Yeah, well, thanks for the softball. Because it's a national security issue. Literally, it's a numbers issue. We cannot win against our attackers, which is everybody, outside of the U.S. as well as inside of the U.S. At high numbers, if we don't have more people in these roles. And if we don't really train our community to think security first in everything that we do. So this is a war. I mean, security is modern defense, cybersecurity. And so as somebody who didn't grow up in the military, I feel like I'm a part of it today. And being that I went to school for sociology, I really feel like even more that I can give back to society and raise this issue to say, oh my gosh, this is a national security issue. We're short 500,000 people right now, for sure, in the U.S., 2.5 million worldwide. In the breaches that were just mentioned earlier, in the last literally 2 months, my clients, which are major organizations and startups and everything in between, are really feeling it. They are scared. It's the first time, I'm 7 years in business, the first time I felt fear. I was also at Rapid7 selling vulnerability management back in 2007 as head of sales. And so I was selling, let's all worry about this. And nobody was worried until PCI started fining for not being compliant. Nobody was complying. I was selling to energy companies that were protecting our grids with no vulnerability management in 2009, 10. And there was no fear in their voice. Today, there's fear. And so that scares me greatly. I feel it. And so it is a national security issue. These breaches are impacting the supply chain that is game-changing. Ransomware, my chief security officer called this out last year. I wish we would have really gotten out there, but he said ransomware is coming. It's going to be a nightmare. It's not going to end, and it's here, and it's happening. So it's a national security issue. We need everybody, no matter what age, getting involved at many levels, and certainly we got to be telling the folks in school, pre-college, and we've got a lot of work to do, and we got to work together because there's more attackers than any of us, even if we have those 500,000 seats filled, or the 2.5 million. And it's sad. The world's a mess. People make money doing these attacks. This is an economic crisis as well. So thanks for the softball.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about softballs is I get to throw them at everybody. So, Calvin, why does diversity matter?
Well, first I would say diversity matters because of me. That's how I wouldn't have gotten an opportunity without somebody thinking about diversity. But truly, as she alluded to earlier, this is a matter of national security. We have a lot of job vacancies, and I can tell you right now, our adversaries are growing a cybersecurity workforce faster than we are. We do not graduate enough people in STEM, and the way our companies are headed right now, we are headed to a technologically advanced society. We're going with smart cities, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and we need more people. We do not graduate enough people in engineering and the hard sciences, and we do not have enough trust in people that major in liberal arts to welcome them into cybersecurity when we should. For instance, scientifically, there's a correlation between music majors and cybersecurity. Nobody knows what it is. We just know that music majors make great cybersecurity professionals. So, but no one's done a study to find out why. And so diversity is important because we need to welcome everybody in who has the propensity to want to learn, and the drive and the passion for it is so important. But what I see, I work with a lot of young people trying to break into the field. And one of the reasons I see that is because every time we look at a job announcement, it requires a CISSP, a Certified Information Security Professional, which is an executive level certification. You can't get someone coming out of college who doesn't have 5 years of work experience to get that certification. So we need to be more open-minded, and we need to understand that, there's women out there who wants to be in this field. There's minorities who wants to be in this field, and we need to work towards that. I got a call the other day from the director of the CyberSN up at Augusta University, right up the street here, and we was talking about diversity from a different aspect. We was talking about it from an agricultural aspect. Who are training cybersecurity professionals to work in agriculture? Georgia is an agriculture-based state, and so is Illinois and some of the Midwest, right? How are we going to take care of them? Think about it from a food industry aspect. You can hit the crops, the fields, the animals well before it gets into the manufacturing plant, and you can just shut that down, right? And so from a biological aspect, biological warfare here, you can go ahead and ruin that early on in the game for us. And that's why it's important to look at who we're going to invite into this diversity, this pot that we mix in terms of diversity. We need to invite everybody. Even people who are retiring who want to come back to the workforce, they already understand the industry. They understand the business. They should be here with us. They get it. And so we try to, sometimes when we act as gatekeepers and we don't do a good enough job of inviting everybody in, we have to be a little more open-minded, and we have to really understand that everybody that walks in is not going to be a ready round. They're not going to be ready to work. They're going to require training, certification, mentorship, sponsorship, whatever we need, because right now we're losing. We got adversaries. Think about China growing so fast in terms of producing cybersecurity professionals that it's just dangerous not only to the U.S. but to the world and the things that they're going to do, especially from an espionage aspect. In this country, we invest a lot of money in research and development, and it's going out of the door when somebody can go in your back door, take your plans. Think about when we talk about developing a stealth aircraft, and China doesn't have to invest $200 million in research and development. They just take our plans and go and redesign it, and they got $200 million worth of research free. Those are the things we're trying to stop. And so for us to say we're not welcoming everybody into cybersecurity, that's an issue. And I'll be the first to tell you, in my military career, I got to where I am today because of women military leaders we had. I would be wrong to tell you. I remember I worked for a female master chief, and I told her I wanted to go to school, and she made sure I went to school. When I was out in Japan, I worked for an intelligence officer, one of the best I ever seen. She was a female. She was hard, but she was fair. And she's in command right now. So I'm telling you, women bring amazing talent to the table. We have to open up our mind. When I look at diversity as men, from a man perspective, we got three choices. You got those guys who are never going to change. No matter what happens, they're never going to change. We're just going to let them go. We're going to preach to them, and hopefully one day they'll change. But most likely not. Then we got those on the fence. Those are the ones we're trying to pull our way and say, you matter, we all matter, we got to fight diversity together. And then we got those who, like myself, who really want to help and believe in this. And so that's where we are today. And, it's a fight that we can't give up on, that's continuous. And we just got to open our minds and just realize that, there is no gender when it comes to what we're trying to accomplish. We need able people very intelligent people who want to be in the fight.
I feel like I'm ready to go to war now. So the next question that I had, and again, I don't have my notes, but it's a good question to ask. Deidre and Calvin, you were both in a position to hire people. Now, I know that CyberSN has some magical sauce, and I did an interview years ago, and they said, hey, Keon, if you were going to hire somebody, what is the best way to get the best candidate without discriminating against people? And I said, you know, if I could do it my way, I would build a robot that is going to survey people and ask them 10 questions. You know, it doesn't matter what the questions are, but we just want to ask 10 questions that qualify the candidate, but I don't hear their voice, I don't see their name, I don't talk to them. I'm just looking for the best person that is going to take the best approach to solve the problem that I have, and then we'll use that process to whittle down to who are the top candidates, and then I'll have a third-party intermediary interview them so that when the person shows up, I know that I'm getting the best person, and I'm surprised by what they look like, what they sound like, their gender, and everything else. And I think somebody in the room was reading my mind or listening to that conversation, because CyberSN does something very similar to that. And so if I give you the floor, from a hiring perspective, share with the audience in the room and online, what are some of the best ways that we have available today and ways that we have available in the future to add to the workforce? Because as Calvin said, the adversary doesn't discriminate. The people attacking your organization don't care what your workforce looks like. They don't care what you're doing. They just want your assets because there's some kind of value. And so we have to beef up our workforce and the people who are in the fight. And so I think what you guys are doing is cool, and I think it adds value to the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, we have a real problem. You know, job searching is broken, as are many old professions in the digital era. When I was first in staffing, for 13 years, we didn't even have computers. So I did, hundreds of placements a month without paper or without computers. And then I left and I went into the software business for 10 years. And then I came back and founded CyberSN. And that's when it really hit me that the digital era has just made content mean nothing, meaning job descriptions mean nothing. You see a CISSP on positions all the time that it should not be on, considering it needs 5 years to apply. And so when you talk about like, oh, well, how do you hire diversity on top of why I'm starting here is that's a hard thing to do on top of also a broken job searching system where job descriptions mean nothing and resumes can literally be anything anybody wants to put on them. And then, oh, by the way, we now have pictures of everybody on LinkedIn, and you can do a Google search and see their Facebook, and you can see everything else. And oh my gosh, how do we then do this? And so when I founded CyberSN, literally it hit me within a month that I couldn't match in any cost of sale that made any sense that I could build the armies that I like to build, hundreds and hundreds of people. And so I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? These job descriptions don't make any sense. And I realized everybody's cutting and pasting everybody's. Nobody really even knew what they necessarily needed. What were the tasks and the projects that they needed completed? Right. And here I am even coming out of Rapid 7 and intelligent. I can't know what every role or job or task that for a security engineer or an analyst or anybody. So first thing I did, and I mentioned earlier, my chief security officer, and he joined us almost 6 years ago, is to craft out a taxonomy. So we are the founders of what is today the 45 job categories of cybersecurity. It started in the 20s. We created a full taxonomy and job creation and profile creation technology that we used internally for 5 years before we brought it to the world a year ago. And when I brought it to the world, I took out the ability to, in a profile, to even have a name. Everybody's anonymous. You can't tell gender. You can't tell anything. You know, there's a date of college graduations or certifications, that they have them, but no dates. And so what you're implying is that should you interact with one of these profiles when you first interact, and certainly my team as well as others, you don't know. And so that is beneficial. And yet, again, it's just a small piece of the biggest problem, which is that we don't even know what we're looking for necessarily. And it shows in our retention statistics. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous if you think about it. Like the average chief information security officer stays at their job 18 to 24 months in the US, 18 months. Like I hire a senior executive, it takes a year just to even understand. When I became CEO of a software company, it took me a year just to even understand the basics of what everybody's doing in a 35-year-old company. So how does that even help us all? It doesn't. And yet these people aren't bad people. They're leaving because they're not supported. They're leaving because nobody really does care about security there, or at least that's how they feel. They're leaving because they can't get the staff. They can't get the budget. My clients in the first 5 years of my company used to fight to get to use a staffing agency. Meanwhile, in IT and software and everything else, it's being done all day long. What does that mean in terms of commitment to really filling roles? So when I think about how are we going to hire diversity, it's a double problem because we do have conscious and unconscious biases, and eventually the person's profile is revealed, so they made it past that first screening with potentially unconscious biases, but it's just going to come back. And so, it's really about what culture do you build in your companies and what do you stand for and are you willing to stand up for it, because it's just going to continue. The profile gets revealed, way before they ever get hired. So it's not like we're hiring people anonymously. And let me just put one thing out there also on top of this is the problem is nobody's doing succession planning. Nobody's doing training. I mean, we came out of an era of manufacturing where that's where we nailed it as a country. Now that's gone. Who's succession planning? Who's doing training? And so burnout is at a high time, at its highest. It's literally scaring me. I'm seeing people in their 40s, and you can be in this business and make a lot of money, by the way. Not just security, tech, right? Like a lot of money. And I see engineers getting, 7-figure packages from tech companies. So retiring in their 40s because they don't want to work, what's that say about what we're all doing? So we've got this new business, new community. It's a new language. It's complex. It's not tech, it's security, and there's tech in it. And it means the whole company and everything that has to do with the company. And so we have a language problem, which is why I created that taxonomy so that we can speak the same language. And yes, it's very similar to NIST and NICE as I learned after I did it, but without intelligence, meaning, the same focus. Without the training, how many people know people that can't get into security even though they have a certification? All the time. They call my firm every day. So, or a degree, or it takes 6 months, or it takes 12 months. Like, what are we doing? And so when I look at it, I say, okay, well, if the top people are moving every 12 to, or whatever, 24 months or less, 18 really is what I see. Well, it takes a year for them to find a job. It takes so they started searching 4 months in, 6 months in. Is that not a vulnerability? And yet I don't blame any of them because people interview poorly and hire poorly, and then once somebody starts, it's like captivity or something, and everybody changes their brain behaviors or something. I don't know. And the veil is revealed that it's not what I thought it was, and oh my gosh. And so that trickles down. And so, of course, there's no succession planning. You got to stay a while to do succession planning. It's a big job. And I also don't, blame professionals that do stick around in leadership of security because they're so overwhelmed to build a security training program for all your people. That's a job of a lot of people, not just the person on top. So this is not, there's a lot going on here, and we've just got to come and own it. And I see somebody raise their hand. Yeah. I got to get your info. Yeah. Seriously. Thank you so much. I do want to get your information. I know who you're sitting to, so I think I know about the program that I've heard, and we got to get the word out. Yes.
We have our own everyone. Cyber Executive Forum. A couple of years ago at the RSA event, we actually had an intelligence operative retired from Unit 8200 from Israel. It's their version of the NSA. And going back to some previous comments that you made regarding diversity on education, how do we look? Going back to STEM, STEAM, they don't approach those positions anymore by a CISSP or a certification. And what they do is now they're getting into the high school levels and they're looking at kids, giving them aptitude tests that don't mean anything. They're not testing for knowledge. They're testing for certain types of skill sets. And the example he gave was it took him 3 years to learn Arabic. Like he was he could literally with that dialect. And it took him 3 years to get that level of skill set. Whereas they use that same model to go after high school kids because all Israelis, doesn't matter if you're male or female, have to do 2 years national service in the military. How long, and this was what blew me away, how long did it take somebody that they identified as having the right skill set to be able to learn the same language at the same level as him? How long do you think it took when they found that person? It took him 3 years. How long did it take one of the people they found in high school?
Half that time.
6 months for the same level of proficiency. So they're doing the same thing for reverse engineering, software. The cognitive skill sets don't matter if you're male, female, if you're a linguist. It doesn't. They're not looking at certifications. They took it a whole different way, and their program now has escalated to a point where many we actually collaborate them at an intelligence level to be able to help fill those gaps. But that's on the government side, military side. What are we doing in the United States on the public side to help fill some of those gaps that is similar to that?
Yeah, I love that, and I'd like to get that information from you because the next thing we're doing is mapping entry level folks to cyber jobs based on cognitive personality, and so anybody that's already ahead of that, because it's so hard. What I hear all the time is an entry level person goes into an interview, they're asked what do they want to do, and they don't know what they want to do. They've had some training. Most of these trainings give them 4 or 5 different job function possibilities. And then the person interviewing says, well, they're not right because they don't really know what they want to do. So we got to back this up. I'm actually launching July 31st at Black Hat, a huge career center. I say huge, meaning anything that anybody needs to know about every cyber role, salaries, certification mapping. We're calling it Pwn Your Career. It's really about giving the individual of us all. We're all the professional. At times we're the employer. And at the end of the day, we're all the professional, the talent, if you will. And we need to have those tools to help because, as I mentioned earlier, if we're not succession planning, then where's that come from? So I'm really excited about that. And it is entry-level to CIO, but it doesn't have the entry-level mapping of how do you at least get that first job. And that's what I want to do next. So I'd love to hear that. And ISSA, I mean, one of the best organizations ever. I've been involved for many, many years, and I'm so happy at the work you all have done. It's awesome. Thanks.
For the non-technical business people in the audience, people keep throwing around the word CISSP, and just so that you have the same context, in the security profession, they have a Certified Information Security Privacy Professional. So that's what the acronym represents. And when they go through the hiring process for HR, very often, even for entry-level positions, they want somebody to hold that professional credential, but you have to have 5 years of experience in 8 domains across all eternity for everything that ever existed for cybersecurity, so it's very unrealistic. I'm not a fan of the certification. I respect the organization behind it, but what they want from people who are new to the profession is unrealistic and contributes and exacerbates the shortage of professionals because you're not giving people a chance. You know, if you ask me what I wanted to be when I grow up, before I started working in cybersecurity, my first declared major was art. And then I changed it to accounting until I failed the financial accounting classes. My brain couldn't conceive of numbers that big. And then I ended up in technology and eventually migrated to security, but it highlights that there are multiple paths to get to this profession that does something very valuable for all businesses everywhere. And with that, I'll segue over to Calvin. So Calvin, you are also in a position where you're not just hiring, but you're hiring educators who are going to teach the people who get the degrees that do the work. So what are some of the things that are driving your initiatives for diversity, for the workforce, for just the mindset and the persona of the individuals who are going to contribute to our success?
For me, what I did, I took a look at everybody that actually works for me, and then I laid out my strategy, what I wanted to accomplish. And when I talked to the provost, when I talked to the dean, and soon I'll be talking to the new incoming president, the first thing they want to do is get back to the roots of why the school was founded, and that is to serve disadvantaged communities and give people with disadvantaged backgrounds an opportunity to get technical degrees at a reasonable cost, right? And so what I'm looking for, I'm not looking for traditional academics anymore. And the reason why is because they teach it very theoretically. I'm looking for people that's coming in from industry, that has the background in industry, who has their PhDs. We do hire a lot of people with master's degrees, but because we are starting a PhD program, we have to have a certain amount of faculty members with PhDs. And so that's what drives that requirement. But we do have a lot of my adjunct faculty members come straight from industry. A lot of my adjunct faculty members teach most of my classes. Why? It's because I want them having hands-on experience with the people that we're educating. That's very important to us. And that's why it's important to me that I diversify my faculty member staff, is because I got a lot of females in those programs. I got a lot of foreign females in those programs. But what I don't have in my programs, I don't have a lot of Afro-American students, female students in my program. That is a big gap for me. Same thing go for Afro-American males. We in Chicago. We on the south side of Chicago. I mean, I was there yesterday, and I could walk to MLK from Illinois Tech. And when you could take all the minorities into school and combine them as one group, that only give you 16% of the student population there. So I got a lot of work to do, because there's over 99 high schools in Chicago. And majority of those high schools are black high schools. And our outreach has been very poor. And so that's why I want to change our dynamics in terms of who we bringing in to teach. I want CISOs teaching some of my harder classes. I want CISOs teaching enterprise risk management. Why? It's because the students are learning from somebody who's in the fight. There's no better way to learn than from somebody who's in the fight. They can take it away from the textbook. They can give you real-world examples. And that's what the students need. They don't need me standing in the front of the classroom telling them, now let me walk y'all through NIST. This is what NIST means. They need somebody that said, hey, today I had an incident. This is how it happens. This is what we did. And this is what we're going to have to do going forward. That information is invaluable to a student. And so my staff know that we're changing the dynamics. I got a resume yesterday from a faculty member from another great school up in the Northwest. And when I shot it around to my staff, they said no. She doesn't have any industry experience. We're looking for people with industry experience, because we need those people in the classrooms, because there's no better way to put your stamp on it than have you all to help us put that stamp on it, right? And so having someone who got a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD right into the classroom, folks, that's a disconnect. I'm telling you that right now. And I have nothing against the traditional academic sense, but we're not talking the traditional academic problem. We're talking national security here. Our companies are getting hacked every day. Our data's at risk every day. We got to do something different. And so what do we do different? We want to bring you all into the classrooms. We're also helping identify programs to get more people in the industry at the PhD level so they can come in the industry. So we're applying for grants that take in so many people from industry, give them a full funded ride through a PhD program to help them be able to come back as staff members to teach at our institution. So that's what we're doing differently. And that is why we're taking a different approach. I get literally upset when people call me an academic, because I got too much time as a practitioner to be called an academic. I'm really a practitioner/academic. I got about 2 months of real-time, full-time academic experience. But I'm coming in with a big sledgehammer, and I'm trying to change that. I want to change that. because I believe the way we're going to make it look different is by bringing you all in. You all know the problem set way better than we do from an academic sense. We can sit back and pontificate about big problems all day, but that's not what students want. Students want to hear your voice in the classroom.
Hey, Calvin. Phil Aguila again. Sorry, I keep grabbing the microphone. Hey, so 3 years ago, I changed jobs from being a chief information security officer to driving innovation programs at U.S. Bank. And one of the things that they put me on was working with the entire university system of Georgia and bringing cybersecurity technology and trying to bring that to all of the fintechs, because if you're not familiar, Georgia is actually kind of like murderer's row when it comes to fintech companies. And of all the fintech companies in Atlanta, they were struggling to bring in technology, IT people, technology people, cybersecurity experts. And so 3 years ago, they asked me to go out to the USG. And my biggest finding from the get-go was working with Georgia Tech, Kennesaw State University, Atlanta Clark, so kind of diverse, different at UGA, was a lot of students didn't even realize cyber was a real career. And where to even begin. And my biggest finding was, and just like the gentleman mentioned before, as you guys were starting, about you have to get them young. And so I actually, my third year, I started going around with the Fulton County school system and Atlanta Public Schools. And I'm a resident for Sandy Springs, so I started working with the Sandy Springs Metro Chamber of Commerce. And my son was going to public school at Sandy Springs Charter Middle School, so it's a charter school specifically for STEM. That I was actually going and briefing students around Fulton County, Atlanta, and in Sandy Springs as a job, what cybersecurity was for me as a former chief information security officer, and to really kind of at least just bring that level up. And then going into, they asked me to go to a couple of the parent-teacher nights, so the parents, I can educate the parents. And if you're struggling with that in Chicago, you got to start young, K through 12, and you got to do marketing and sales, and then have opportunities. And so the USG here, the University System of Georgia, started a FinTech Academy. Cybersecurity is one of their pillars. And so I helped them start inserting cybersecurity as a discipline inside of the USG FinTech program. So I'm trying to give you some examples, like starting early, and it has to be like a multi-level all the way up through, the Ph.D. program to get them through it. And just add one more piece. There already is and it brings both of your comments in the last 40 minutes. The CISSP, the certification standard for security people, I think is a solid program because, as Kian said, you have to have 5 years experience to demonstrate your ability in cybersecurity, which I think is a good baseline. One thing you didn't mention is you also have to get someone like me to sign off, to sponsor you to be a certified information security professional. And that tells me as a CISO that, hey, this person has their chops, they know what they're doing. But for the people that are entry level, there's actually another certification that makes a ton of sense called Security Plus. You don't have to have any of that background criteria. It's a very simple test in my belief, but it's an entryway, just like the 3 years of learning to speak a language, that there's an aptitude there that even liberal arts majors that are right-brained, I can answer your question why they're good at jobs. Most of my best threat intelligence, attack and pen, vulnerability experts were liberal arts majors, guitar players actually too, that I found in drummers, because they're not left-brained, they're not engineers like me. I'm a aerospace and mechanical engineer by degree, but my right-brain people were the best creative thinkers, and pulling them out of the liberal arts, which are struggling actually in careers, and bringing them to cyber, which has, I think, 1.8 million job openings, we can employ. And I'm going to close out with one last thing. There's a FUD factor in the statistics today on open jobs that I think we have to be mindful for. Between China and India, China's got 1.6 billion people. So for the top 10% of people that they graduate from college, that's like our entire graduation in the United States. So there's a fear part of that statistic that I think we need to shy away from. We just need to get anybody at this point into cyber, because even if they decide to go into insurance, at least they're cyber literate and they're not opening up holes for people like us trying to defend, but they're cyber literate. So there's a lot I just unpacked there, but I just want to give you guys some opportunities there and things you guys have brought up.
Yeah, you brought up a great point, and that's one of the things that we intend to do is to start young. We have to go into the schools, the very low grades in the schools, and start implementing programs, summer camps, even winter camps, and even weekly camps, and helping these kids understand and get that exposure to just give them that glimmer of hope of what they can do as they get older. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I'm not sure this one's working. Hi, I'm Kelly Masada. Two quick things I just want.
Yes.
Awesome camp. And there are also how to teach. But for those of you who don't know, cyber camps, young women, it is the best event I speak at every single year. I love it because the last one I did, I signed into Zoom and they were having a kazoo band. So there's no other conference in security where they're having a kazoo band when you sign on.
We can
The
add
other
that.
thing I just want to mention, just a little piece of advice. As an adjunct professor, I adjunct for Boston College and American University. When I try and enlist other security professionals into the adjunct space, the barrier that they tell me is how to build curriculum. So if there's a way to sort of break down that barrier, and one of the thoughts I had was, could you create a partner program so an experienced adjunct or a faculty member could actually be a partner with a new person coming into the academic space to say, this is how you grade, this is how you build your curriculum, this is how you deal with student dynamics. There's a lot going on in a classroom environment. And I think for some security professionals kind of coming right from industry into that space, it's like, I don't know what to do. I can speak at a conference, but speaking for 16 weeks is a totally different ballgame.
And we can help them with that. We can set up a sponsor program with one of our other adjunct faculty members or one of our full-time professors and just have them train and they have a buddy program for them. So absolutely right. That is a fear. So, but again, we need industry people to teach classes. You all are the best. You're more qualified than anybody else. I mean, I know people walking out of the door with high PhDs in engineering, but guess what? They have no real work experience. I'm not shooting anybody in the face on that. I'm just calling out facts. What we need right now, how do we get the students the best return on their investment is to bring you all into the classroom.
David has the next question.
Thank you. Thank you. It's on. There you go. David Prue, American Integrated. The ransomware dollars we paid obviously is a grade for all of us of how unprepared we were from education level to even obviously those at the gate. We don't have the people to man those gates. But so comes to action here. What is an action plan? And what can business can do about it? And I was one that came off my top of my head is getting involved in your own communities by offering scholarships. Put some dollars behind our concern today and put some dreams in their head of how much money that's involved. But with that, I do work with institutions of creating scholarships and as such. But what other, aside from sponsoring another Marvel show, can you think of to make heroes out of females and minorities all over?
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because there's a financial barrier to this problem, and I think that let's not look for other solutions and just get rid of the financial barrier. I mean, it answers the diversity piece too. I mean, how much does this cost? These trainings that we need in today's current market, let's say to create a security engineer that at best is 3 years, outside of whatever schooling, on hands-on practice, that's a $100,000 investment on top of everything else just for the training over a 3-year period.
Yep.
That's not scalable. So this is the number one problem. And those certifications that we all just mentioned that we all like that mean something, they're the cost.
Right.
They're the $10,000 to $20,000 to $30,000 certs. And so I really don't know any other way because at the end of the day, it's training. Training, 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 training.
Well, I would tell you this, and this is not me putting a plug in for anybody. I know 2 top universities where you can get a master's degree in cybersecurity for under $10,000. One of them is right down the street, Georgia Tech. Matter of fact, their master's program is $9,999. And New York University is the other one because they have a fellowship program where they get grants for it. And so that's the first question I asked the dean when I took my job. Remember, I'm carrying my sledgehammer. I want to know how can we offer a competitive program for master's degrees in cybersecurity. We can't compete at an academic level when you got great institutions with great reputation, with great faculty members teaching. So why isn't cybersecurity costs, reduced for everybody, not just those particular schools? I think we as institutions have to do more and be creative and innovative to drive down the cost so we can get these people educated and get them out in the workforce where they can drive a difference.
Yeah. And loans are not the answer.
Exactly.
I don't know if anybody watches Explained, but there's a good one on right now about college debt and what the heck happened.
Yes.
And how it happened. And it was the federal government opening loans and blah, 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 blah. So loans is not the answer either, whatsoever. We have to pay for it. We as a society, we need to pay for it. And somebody said it earlier, it needs to be the basic framework of any person coming up through education, as does emotional intelligence skills, because I can tell you what, you can go train all these people, but the reason I take them from one organization and put them into another is the lack of emotional intelligence in the organization I'm taking them from, which means translates into behavior that's either really poor, not a good place to work, or no training, or both, which is even worse and does exist. And so, I make sure our clients have that answer, or how am I going to get that person to leave if we can't show that answer? And so it's both. We need the emotional intelligence training, which, diversity, inclusion, all falls under. It's communication, what we used to call soft skills, and only salespeople have them. Those days are over. So we need that, and we need cybersecurity awareness and training and STEM and music, and everything we've always had shall not go away, and yet there needs to be a framework of basics that changes from what we've had.
Sir, I know you're waiting to talk. I just wanted to say this. So I agree with everything she just said, especially about the human behavior piece. We do not understand human behavior in cybersecurity. So those of you in executive level positions, understand something. We got great technology. We got great people writing countermeasures, controls, but what we don't understand is the human factor. And I will tell you, I just designed a course for Arizona State where I'll be teaching that same course for Arizona State. It's a full course, a 16-week course in human factors. It goes through the whole gamut. We're now working to get that course at the executive level. Why do we need it at the executive level? Because if we can teach the executives the understanding the human factors and what is done for the aviation community, what is done for healthcare, and what is done for the rail community and industrial safety, we will have a different element and a different tool in our toolbox to help us be able to fight this going forward.
Yeah, you have to retain them.
Right.
If you don't retain them, you won't win.
So we're getting to the end of the schedule for this module, so I'll give Scott the last question, and then I have a great closing point from one of our online attendees.
It's a quick question, and actually one of the second, is it Phil? What he said, when things were normal back a year or so ago, I got to speak at a STEM school for a bunch of students, and these were like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th graders, whatever, about cybersecurity and communications. I'm not a technology person, reputation management and have a thing around that. But what I found after I spoke to them was that these kids were coming up to me and talking about how their hobby was hacking. I mean, these are little kids. I mean, these are like, 12-year-old, 11-year-old. And then, oh yeah, I love to do it. I hack into this company, I hack into that company. So what I wanted to ask you is, these kids are very aware, and these kids are very smart, but if you ask them what they want to do, they'll tell you, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. It's not about cybersecurity. They don't even realize what they're doing and how smart they are. How do you get into the public schools, not just the STEM schools, but all the public schools and the private schools, the young kids, to really get them on a track like they do in like Germany has a track for kids usually. You go to college, you go to technical school, we've assessed this. How do you get those kids excited about this when their teachers are clueless, when schools are clueless,
and and the kids know 10 times more than their parents or the administrators.
Yeah. It's same goes to even selling girls on cyber. It's, you know, they can't see themselves because everything you see on TV is a hoodie and a keyboard, right? I can tell you on July 31st, every job will be mapped out by task and project and money. And money is a big way to motivate those people. Because when you can attach them, they can actually see, oh, I'll be actually doing these tasks, and this is the kind of money I can make. I think that's a big piece of it, is they don't know what they don't know. And so if we can open that up, and then it's what you said earlier of getting involved in the community from there. But we even as practitioners don't have this data at our fingertips. Right. So how's an entry-level person going to decide out of 45 job categories? There's over 700 titles in our industry, and that's with mapping them as together. 10 categories, 10 categories and 4, defense, offense, compliance, management, right, sales, and then 45 job categories. How do they know? So that will be the first step.
And I just want to add real quickly, the other thing we need to do, we need to make sure those kids that are hacking, we got to teach them to do it ethically. We got to teach them to do it legally. That's my first concern. My second concern is, she mentioned it earlier with Gen Cyber, getting the faculty members in the classroom and getting people from industry in that classroom. And then every organization, from my former organization, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, you name it, should be having summer camps for these kids and exposing them to real world problems. And kids, you'll be amazed how fast they can come up with a solution. So we're not doing enough yet.
Yeah, so as we move forward to the final question, I do want to remind everybody in the room that we have a very vigorous online audience. And one of our online audience members, I'll give credit to Jacqueline Parks. She said that one of the challenges that we're facing is that employers don't know the difference between the different security certifications. So if you don't work in the industry, we just heard that there are 800 different positions, and with those positions come different levels of certification. So we've thrown around the CISSP, there was a mention of the Security Plus, and I think it's a great point that Jacqueline raises, but it leads to the closing question for this discussion. If I am a non-technical business person who does not work in cybersecurity and doesn't have that experience, what is the practical step that I take to find good talent, bring them into the organization to help us meet our security needs? Yeah. And so we want to focus on something practical so everybody else can benefit, but it's a great question and a great problem to solve.
Yeah, well, employers need the same data. It's not, while it is for honing one's career, it's also for the employer. So the hiring center has all the data for the employers. We map 357 certifications to these functional roles in the career progression stages so that you all can have that as employers as much as have it as professionals. So to me, it's a lot of data. I mean, there's more certifications than 357, but these are the main ones, and there's 350. That's pretty crazy. So it's not possible without having a place for all that data to be sitting. So that's why I'm providing it for free. By the way, there's no charge, no membership or anything else. I'd like this chaos to stop as soon as possible, and I care about all of us winning. So that's why I created it.
Yeah, I would tell you, we face a similar problem on the academic side. Is I got a memo on Monday from one of my assistant professors. He sent the memo to the Department of Defense. He wants to know why we have NSA accredited degrees, but when our college graduates graduate, they get zero, what's the word I'm looking for? He said they get zero mapping to the DoD accreditation process. So he's saying, why is that the case? Because we forcing them to go out and get degrees on top of this. You're forcing us to actually teach the certification requirements in our curriculum. So how do we meet in the middle? So we just throwing so much at them that, they're overwhelmed. We got to find a way to take some of that off the table to where they can actually, it's more of a bite size for them so they can, digest it. But right now, I got students that are studying for comprehensive exams and studying for security certification at the same time. So that's a problem.
So final thoughts, closing argument. If you had to say one thing that people need to take away from this conversation, and we covered a broad set of topics, for the audience in the room and online, what's your key takeaway?
Train your own people and keep them, retain them. Make retention statistics a part of compensation. You know, I mean, this is ridiculous that people are moving jobs so often. It really is not powerful for us. It really started in 2000s, by the way, with the .com. Being a recruiter at the time, that was the word on the street, was tell people that the hiring manager would say, well, tell them to move. It's more money. You don't get rate, all these things. And somebody coming in business and school or, knew, I sort of watched it all. And as I got older, I realized like, wow, like, I worked for the same people for 21 years, and this is not good, what has been created out here in the .com era and changing the tax laws for contractors and perm people and CapEx and OpEx and all these things that are really incentivizing retention problems, by the way. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to that. Make a culture, make a place that people don't want to leave, and train them, grow them, love them. Nothing felt better than one of our security engineers getting a raise recently, and he said to his boss, hey, just don't price me out of CyberSN, whatever you do. I was like, oh my gosh, that is the best thing I've ever heard. That made me so happy, and he won't. There's no such thing, and yet how wonderful. So I'm super lucky to walk into a culture like that right out of college, and then to embrace it myself and just create it. But it's really the only answer, is to train your own people as well as hire.
I guess my closing comment is for us leaders, is to get out of the way. Listen and get out of the way. The younger generation telling you what they want to do, they understand this a lot better than we do. For instance, a lot of them want to come in, they don't want to study just computer science anymore. They just don't want to study IT. I got something in my inbox right now where students want to major in software engineering. They want that major. So I got to create a interdisciplinary degree offer for them, so they don't have to come into school and major in something that we telling them to major in, that we did, our generation. They're telling you what they want to do. We have to listen, because some of these kids are not just college students. They're already working for the Amazons. They're already working for the Googles of the world. They're telling you what they're saying. We need to listen, and we need to take heed. If academia is going to be a problem solver going forward, we have to be more agile. We have to be more flexible. And we have to be able to listen and get out of the way. The traditional academic programs are not going to be the same way 5 to 10 years from now. COVID has shown us that we could take our programs online, and students can learn that way. Not all students, but some students. Because the traditional student isn't the student that's standing in the dorms anymore. It's that working adult. That's the traditional student now. The demographics shifted in academics. And that's what we need to do. We need to be open-minded to change and understand we got to start building colleges and universities for the future that's going to help us solve the diversity issue we have and also solve the national security issue that we have in this country. If not, schools will become irrelevant. Everybody will go the certification route. They'll do their self-training. They'll do their learning on how to hack at home, and universities will just die off one by one.
So my closing comment, and then we'll transition into the next section on the agenda, relates to something that another member of our virtual audience said. The question was, how do you get this new generation with short attention spans to have the stick-to-itiveness to get through a cybersecurity program? But I think Calvin touched on it, and I think that's a good way to close. A lot of what we're talking about requires mature professionals who are willing to invest the time and the energy to learn what they have to learn to protect their organizations. I mean, if you think about it, business owners need to learn this stuff. Accountants need to learn it. I hope that my CPA is doing it, because I'm going to be in trouble if somebody steals all of my data from her because they can't steal it directly from me. But this is a problem that everybody needs to be engaged in for the solution. And we've had a great conversation about some of the approaches that we can use.